All right, so this is the first video in the curriculum objectives. If you're watching this video, you've already done all the foundational objectives, whether you passed them on the pre-assessment or you actually went through the skill checks. But now this is kind of the algebra 2 stuff. Maybe even this is review because this is kind of our opening unit. But this might be the first video that some people are watching. It might be the fourth video that some other people are watching. So if you've seen some of this explanation before, I'm sorry, but I don't know who's watching which video first. So one thing to remember with all the videos, this isn't bad to hear multiple times, is make sure you're taking notes as you're watching the videos. It's been proven if you're writing things down, it's gonna help with your memory and recall. So make sure you're taking notes as you go along. One good thing with it being a video is you can pause it and write down stuff. You can go back and re-listen to something if I went too fast or you didn't understand something I said. So the video aspect helps you a lot. There's kind of two different ways you could take notes. One, I'm writing on these slides. Those are all available on the Google Docs. So you could just print those out before you watch the video and use those as kind of a note template. And I'm not gonna do that for the whole class because it would use too much paper, but if you specifically wanna use the slides, you can print them out. You can also just handwrite them yourself. And there's some helpful things throughout the videos to help you with your handwritten notes. The first thing, they all have a title right in the middle of the screen to start. So fractions with a variable, so you can write that nice and big at the top of the page. That's what this video is going to be about. And then all the slides after that first one will have a title, so that can help you differentiate as you go through. If you put the title of the slide, it can help you quickly find what you're looking for. This one, maybe you don't even have to write because just kind of explaining what we're doing in the video. We're just going to be doing some things with variables. All right, so variable just basically means we're using a letter instead of the number. In some cases, the letter will represent something, and this one is literally just an X just to be a variable, to make things more algebra-like. So the first thing we're gonna do is add the following one. So you can see how this is different than the foundational objectives, because now we have this X. But you already know how to add fractions. To add fraction, you have to get a common denominator. So we need the two denominators down here to be the same. Then we can do that is we can use this 3 on the left-hand side. Let me erase some of this stuff. Use the 3 on the left-hand side and use the X on the right-hand side. And then now we multiply. Multiplying, we just go straight across. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times X is 3X. 2 times X is 2X. And 3 times X is 3X. So now we have that common denominator down here. They're both X's. And now once we get a common denominator, we know our final answer is over there, that one denominator. And one thing you have to be careful with throughout this video and the practice problems and the skill check is like terms. When you're adding or subtracting, multiplying seems to always be the easier one. When you're adding and subtracting, you need to make sure you have like terms, which means the variable parts are the same. So I'll just write that down. So if the variable parts are the same, then it's a like term. 3 has no variable part, there's no X. And here we have an X. So there's one that doesn't have an X and one that does. That means they're not like terms, so we just have to leave them separate. All right, and this is actually just the final answer. All right, it's not pretty, but we can't really do anything else. Some mistakes people will make as they try to go through this, they'll try to cancel out the X's. But the reason you can't do that is that plus sign. You can only cancel things out when it's multiplication with the whole top. All right, same reason you can't cancel out these 3's because the 3 is being added. All right, so our final answer, I'll just write it without all the extra writing. It's just this whole thing like that. All right, so just make sure you don't oversimplify. And this is kind of one of the hard parts with general algebra is you have to simplify, but you don't want to do it too much. Just make sure you're not canceling things out that you're not allowed to cancel out. All right, so here's another example. We want to subtract the following fractions. All right, one thing you could do the exact same thing we just did. Do 9x over 9x 3x over 3x, all right? Because if we use the other denominator in the other fraction, that'll guarantee that we have a common denominator. And you can do this, all right, but you just have to be comfortable with multiplying variables together, which we technically haven't covered yet. You've probably did it already, but just say you're not comfortable with that. What you want to do is find the smallest thing you can multiply to get these to be the same. So 3 and x are just really just two separate things, but 9 we can break down as a 3 times 3 and an x. All right, so we see that these denominators already have some stuff in common. The only thing that's missing is this 3 here is missing from over here. All right, we can just get a 3 on the left-hand side, then they'll be the same. So instead of multiplying by a lot of stuff, I can just multiply by a 3 on the top and bottom. And that's gonna give me 6 over 9x. All right, 3 times 3 is 9. And 4 over 9x. All right, now you can see the denominators are the same without us having to do a bunch of extra multiplication things. So especially when you're working with variables, you want to try to make your life as easy as possible. What is the smallest thing you can multiply by to get those denominators to be the same? And then we're going to have our final answer. 6 minus 4 is 2. And that's our final answer. And there's nothing we can cancel out or make simpler than that. All right, so this is your first video, and this is your first time seeing this. Now that I've done a couple examples, you'll get one that's your turn. All right, and this is just a chance for you to try the problem yourself. All right, work it out completely, get to a final answer, and then my answer will pop up, and you can kind of compare yours. If you get the same answer, it probably means you're understanding the stuff that's happening. If you get a different answer, then you want to kind of compare my work to your work, see where you might have made a mistake. Maybe it's something small, like you thought 2 plus 2 was 6 or something like that, or maybe you just don't understand, and that's when you need to kind of get help and help me explain how I did the previous problem and how I would have done this one. All right, so now the video will kind of pause itself so you can work on the problem. And here's my solution to the problem. This one's very similar to the first example we did, multiplying by the number on the left, the x on the right, and we can't simplify this final answer at all, so we just have to leave it like that. And again, compare that to the answer you got. If you got the same thing, just keep on going through the video. If you got something way different, all right, try to figure out where you went wrong. And if you can't figure that out, then call me over and get extra help. All right, so now we're just gonna switch and do multiplication and division. All right, so 2 over x divided by 5. The first thing is once you start mixing variables and non-variables, if you have a whole number is always just that number divided by 1. And now we can remember, okay, what happens when we divide fractions? We do keep, change, flip. So we keep the first fraction the same. We change division to multiplication. And we flip the second fraction. 5 over 1 becomes 1 over 5. So all you do is you change a division problem into a multiplication problem. And then multiplication is the nice one. We just go across the numerator, go across the denominator. And we get our final answer. There's no simplifying to be done here, so that's what we leave as our final answer. All right, here's one for your turn. This is the multiplication problem, not a division problem, so it's actually one less step. I would go ahead and try this one on your own. All right, here's my solution. So again, multiplication, we just go across the top and across the bottom. 6 times 7 is 42. 4 times x is 4x. All right, so if you got this answer, you basically did the multiplying step right. But in this one, we actually can simplify a bit more. 42 and 4 are both even. So I can pull out this factor of 2 and cancel them out. And I get 21 over 2x. All right, so this answer is technically right. But if it was a multiple choice question or something like that, this would be the answer that would be the most right. All right, because it's fully simplified. The numbers are as small as they can get. All right, so this is how you multiply fractions with there's a variable. And if this is your first video, this is also your first time seeing this. Again, other people might have seen and know this is the case. But every video, pretty much every video is going to end with a multiple choice question. So the multiple choice question is a really quick way for me to be able to scroll through the videos and kind of see which ones people are getting right, which ones people are getting wrong. So it's basically another problem for you to try on your own. There's a little bit of a safeguard that there's only 4 options. All right, so if you get none of the options, then you definitely know you probably need to change something a bit. All right, but go through and try to answer this one. All right, the only thing to be careful with is that Edpuzzle automatically shuffles the question. So if you think the answer is D, it's not always the one that's furthest down. It can shuffle it, so it could be first, second, or third. All right, so figure out which answer you think is right, and then just make sure you're careful when you click the correct one. All right, but now that you're done the video, the next thing you're gonna do is try the practice. All right, so there's a printed out practice sheet with problems similar to the ones in the video. Once you're comfortable with the practice, all right, you're gonna do the skill check. And at any point in these first two steps, if you're not understanding something, you can't get a question right or something, that's when you can ask the people near you, ask me for help. All right, and before you do the skill check, which is when you kind of have to know what you're doing, or else you're just basically gonna do the skill check over and over again. All right, so that's the first curriculum video for this mini unit 0. All right, and go ahead and try to answer this multiple choice question and move on.